Hi, my name is Fletcher Wimbush. I'm the CEO of Discover, a performance hiring software platform. I want to talk to you about another one of my kind of pet favorite topics here, reference checking. There is, I think, this enormous myth out there that you cannot get meaningful reference checks from candidates. And it drives me crazy. I talk to HR people all the time who say, oh, we don't check references. They're pointless. They don't do any good. You won't learn anything from trying or even getting or collecting references. They'll just give you their friends or their family members, and they're only going to provide references that are just going to say good things about them, or you flat out can't get any meaningful information from their previous employers, by the way, are the best people to get references from, because they have HR policies against it. They won't tell you anything more than confirming dates of employment, or maybe, if you're lucky, rehire eligibility, confirming titles or something like that. So very, basic information that doesn't give you a ton of insight into whether or not you have a candidate who is got a track record of high performance. And that's why we want to check references. I've done this over 10,000 times, guys. So when somebody tells me you can't do this, it definitely drives me crazy, because I've done it 10,000 times. You can definitely do this, right? Checking references is one of the most powerful tools we have in our tool belt when it comes to hiring. It's also one of the easiest things that we can do. In fact, it's one of the first things I begin to investigate with candidates, oftentimes before I even speak with them, but definitely within the first 5 minutes of any sort of interview. I begin to uncover references, meaningful references that can actually give me information about this person's ability to perform and be a good team player. How do you do this, right? It's actually a relatively simple process here. And it starts with the premise of, if the individual was a rock star, if they were a great team player, if they were somebody that everybody liked to have on their team and did a great job, then of course other people, particularly their previous supervisors, who are and were their chief consumer of their work product, right? The supervisor gets the customer complaints or the customer compliments. They're the ones that have to monitor and make sure that the team member is producing at a certain level. They're the ones that hear about how that person interacts with other people on the team and their supervisor, get the chief consumer of how that relationship works, for sure, right? So they have a clear picture of everything that person's doing, both with the customers internally and with leadership. There's no reason why we shouldn't be seeking these people out to speak with them. The only reason why this person would not provide a reference is just like what our mothers taught us when we were young. If they have nothing nice to say, then you do what your mother taught you to do. Say nothing at all, and that makes perfect sense. Good people get glowing references. They have good relationships with their previous supervisors and leadership teams because they did a great job and they were a great team player. Therefore, these people, these previous supervisors, these relationships that they had, these folks have no problem hopping on the phone and doing this person a favor and speaking to me for 5 or 10 minutes about their previous performance. And yes, they often will say really great things, but these people are also business folks. They are not they're not as subjective as mothers and friends and colleagues, right? They tend to do actually have an ability to provide a relatively objective, holistic perspective on that individual. So they will provide some constructive feedback about areas where that person needed to improve, not just give you all the glowing, amazing things that they did, right? And we actually co-published a paper with our friends at Bowling Green State University where we studied this. So we collected thousands and thousands of references from a variety of different types of references. So it's direct supervisors, colleagues, friends, other types, academics or mentors, things like that, right? And hands down, supervisors provided the most objective and critical, not in a negative way, but evaluation of those relationships. And it was a significant difference above the rest of those types of references who tended to give those more fluffy, glowing types of references. So we know that if we can speak to those folks, that yes, they may say lots of nice things about those individuals, otherwise they wouldn't say anything at all, but they will also provide some nice constructive feedback. The key with references and why it's so powerful and such a simple thing to do is right off the bat, right when you're beginning to get to know a candidate, or for each of their jobs throughout their work history, you can simply say something. Once you've got some context, oh, you were a barista at Starbucks. Awesome. Well, who was your supervisor there? Oh, great. It was Jane. And awesome. What was Jane's role? Oh, she was the store manager, somebody of authority who had some skin in the game here. Awesome. Would Jane, if we get further in this process, hop on the phone and chat with me for 5 or 10 minutes about the time you two spent working together? The types of responses you'll get back are mind-blowing, first of all, but we're really looking for that emphatic yes. Of course, Jane and I were homies. We loved each other. I did such a great job. She would tell you that I was one of her top baristas. We generated more revenue on my shifts. We got along really well. I was the head trainer for the other baristas because she trusted me so much, and I did such a great job. And every time I would fill in and train, those people I worked with would do better. And oh my gosh, she would say all these amazing things. So the details, right? Now it gives me an opportunity to use our art of being curious. I can begin to say, well, tell me a little more about that, or tell me how that impacted the business, or why was that so important that she felt that way about you? So begin to use those who, why, what, when, and how, the tell me mores, really get into the nitty gritty there. And that's a really eye-opening conversation to have, because it tells you a lot about what that person was really good at, why they were liked, the types of accomplishments that they've had in their previous roles, and it's all going to be validated. Also, it acts like a truth serum. So I'm asking this question oftentimes. Again, the very first interview, after I get through the pleasantries and I get through some context, I'll ask about their most recent role, previous position here, right? And immediately you'll get a sense of whether this person is leaving a trail of happy supervisors or unhappy supervisors, right? So you start to see the theme. If you do this 5 or 10 times, you will see the difference between great candidates and not so great candidates. The stories will be distinctly different. The not so great candidates will make excuses like HR policy against it. They don't work here anymore. That person, we're not in contact anymore. They'll make all sorts of straw man arguments, which oftentimes I'll help them try to overcome. Well, you can find anybody's contact information anymore. You can track those people down. And my question wasn't whether HR has a policy against it or not. I asked you, would you call Jane and ask her to do you a solid and talk to me for 5 or 10 minutes? What would she say? It's a yes or no answer. No's might be okay too. Well, great. Why not? So tell me more about that. Maybe Jane was a bad boss, and I get this a lot as one of the myths that we try to bust. Well, that is possible. So as we go back through the work history and we start to hit the previous supervisor before that, and this previous supervisor before that, and the previous supervisor before that, I bet you 9 out of 10 times you'll get a similar story about each of those relationships. That's starting to show you a trend. So this person's either really bad at choosing jobs and bosses, or they're the problem. Okay, say the 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, more than happy to give glowing recommendations, and the 1 is not. Great. Well, now I have overwhelming evidence to support the person's claim that Jane was probably a dysfunctional boss, and I can live with that. Look, life isn't perfect. I'm not looking for perfection in using this technique. I'm looking for overwhelming evidence that they leave a track record of happy customers and bosses and successful work products, right, through using this technique. It's pretty much as simple as that. You can strengthen this question by quantifying. So I always like to follow up even after they give me their general summary, and I've dug all into that, and say, well, how would they rate your performance? And I like to add this little extra piece here. This is an enhancement from our friends in the torque method from Top Grading. But how would they rate your overall performance on a scale of 1 to 10? I like to add in, how would they rate your overall performance compared to others that they've worked with on a scale of 1 to 10? So it changes the dynamic of the question. And when I ask the supervisor this same question too, it forces them to put the person's performance into context as it relates to others that have been in that role or that they've supervised. So it's, on a sliding scale, it's going to be difficult to get 9s and 10s in that case. If I'm looking for 8s and 9s out of people, 7s can even be more than acceptable. So what I'm not looking for are no's. They won't provide the reference. Now I can ask the what are your weaknesses question in a much more productive manner. Okay, they'll give you an 8 compared to others' overall performance. What would they say to me when I talk to them about what you could have done to get from an 8 to a 9? And this requires them to use a high level of emotional intelligence, right? It's not what they think their weaknesses are. It's not what they think they needed to do to get to an 8 to a 9. This is about what kind of feedback that their previous supervisor would provide and what I should expect them to say about them and about their ability or what they would need to do to get to that next level in their job or their career or performance. I really stick in on this one, and I'll ask follow-up questions, or I'll re-ask, or I might even ask what else if they give me a kind of a fluffy answer, right? So digging into that through a lot of follow-up can be very, very important. That's the technique, and I would just encourage you to try it. You do have to do it exactly as I said. So you have to ask, what is their name? What was their title? Context. What should I expect them to say about you? How would you rate them compared to others on a scale of 1 to 10? And what should I expect them to say about what you would need to do to get from one level to the next level? And you've got to cover all of those. Now, the more times you do it, it can be very conversational, like I've just observed or shared with you here. But this is the single most powerful technique in interviewing and hiring that you could ever use. And it's absolutely universal, no matter what kind of role or person that you're hiring for. If this was helpful, I encourage you to go out and try it. Share this with your friends. Subscribe to your channel. We got more content coming for you. We'd love to share more tips. And ultimately, we want to help you, execute the best hiring strategies, introduce you to the best hiring tools and techniques so that you can build the best team possible. So we'll see you in the next video.